I remember it well. It was 1974, and I was 32. I took a job as a technician at a government contractor. They promised it would be good for my career. I thought I'd be working on something exciting. Instead, I found myself in a sterile, windowless room. The flickering fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the air smelled faintly of chemicals. Cold drafts came from exposed pipes, sending chills through me. First, I was bored. I spent my days staring at screens filled with data. I thought I was seeing patterns. I leaned in closer one day, and suddenly the screen went dark. My stomach dropped. Something felt wrong. The tension in the room thickened. That S when the voice came through the intercom. Follow the rules, it crackled. No talking. No looking away from your screen. No questioning your purpose here. I sat up straighter. The words felt like a warning. Each time I made a mistake, I sensed a presence lurking closer. Whispers echoed in the room, creeping into my ears. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I kept asking myself if this was a government experiment or something worse. I wasn't the only technician in the building, but it felt like I was alone. I kept to myself, the pressure building around me. The clock ticked loudly. Everything was too quiet. I could hear my heart beating. The screen became my only focus, even as my eyes burned. Then the whispers returned. I strained to hear them. Were they real? I wanted to turn around, but fear anchored me to my chair. I felt cold, as if the whispers were trying to get inside my head. The rules weighed on me, heavy like a stone. I thought about breaking them just once. I hesitated, but deep down, I knew it wouldn't end well. The tipping point came. I looked away from my screen, and the lights flickered violently. The whispers laughed, echoing off the walls. My heart raced. I quickly turned back to the screen, but dread swallowed me whole. Then I felt a presence behind me, just standing there. It made my skin crawl. I finally mustered up the courage to speak. "Are you okay?" No answer came. I turned my head slowly, but there was nobody there. Panic set in, and I returned my focus to the screen. I felt eyes on me, watching. The whispers grew louder, almost singing a chilling tune. I didn't know what to do. Every nerve in me screamed to escape. But I was trapped. I was locked in that unmarked room, haunted by whispers that seemed to grow from the very shadows. I glanced at the clock. Time ticked on, but it felt endless. And then, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Why did you look away?" I froze. I turned around, filled with dread. Yet again, there was nothing but silence. I was left standing there, feeling eyes on my back as the whispers grew louder, closing in. The air turned electric, as if charged with something otherworldly. I wished I had never taken this job. I gulped hard, my pulse racing not just with fear, but with something more primal. I asked myself what was coming next, and the whispers only danced in my head, promising I would find out. I just didn't know when. Chapter 2. The clock struck 3, echoing through the silence. I rubbed my eyes, the strain a constant reminder of the hours I'd spent staring at the screen. I was still shaken, but I had to focus. I didn't want to attract unwanted attention. The whispers had dimmed for a moment, but they lingered just below. It was then that I noticed some old photographs tacked to the wall. They were faded images of the building. Employees, smiling, standing together in front of the entrance. The contrast was jarring. I knew better now than to believe in any happiness. I leaned closer, trying to remember their faces, searching for something familiar. "Stop wasting time." The intercom crackled again, shattering my thoughts. My stomach dropped. "Get back to work." I blinked rapidly, returning my gaze to the screen. I fumbled with the keyboard, my fingers trembling. The whispers returned, louder now, swirling like a storm in my mind. I tried to block them out, but it was impossible. Each murmur felt like a warning. My heart pounded again. Then, I noticed something unusual in the data. There were irregularities, patterns that didn't align. My curiosity outweighed my fear. I studied it closely. Each line of numbers seemed to pulse in rhythm, as if they were alive. I couldn't help but feel that they were revealing something sinister. Suddenly, The lights flickered once more, and I cringed at the sound of those whispers, now laughing. I wanted to scream, but I pressed my lips together. I tried to shake off the dread creeping back into my thoughts. I glanced around the room, hoping for a glimpse of someone, anyone. But there was only the oppressive silence and the hum of machinery. In a moment of defiance, I took a deep breath and decided to investigate that curious data. My finger hovered over a command key, felt like an electric current. I hit enter, despite the gnawing sense of dread telling me not to. The screen refreshed, revealing a map of the facility. I recognized the layout but not the details. There were rooms marked with red circles, untouched and hidden away from my previous view. Each one had a code. My heart raced. What could they be hiding? Why did you do that? The voice on the intercom snapped, cutting through my thoughts like a knife. I flinched, looking around for the source. You've crossed a line. Panic surged through me. I stared at the map, frozen. I had gone too far. I felt like prey being watched by something unseen. The whispers intensified as if my actions had angered them. Then the lights flickered again, and this time they went off completely. The room plunged into darkness. My pulse quickened. I stood in silence, unsure if I should wait or flee. I reached for the nearest desk, trying to steady myself. That's when I heard something. A scuffle behind me, soft but definite. I turned, straining my eyes to catch any hint of movement. The darkness was absolute. But then, the whispers came again, this time sharper and clearer. You shouldn't have looked at the map. My breath caught in my throat. I wished I had never pressed that key. What had I stumbled into? I took a step back, trying to sense if I was alone. I realized I might not be. And then I heard a low, soft breathing. It was close, very close. The fear took hold as I awaited whatever might emerge from the shadows. Chapter 3. I felt frozen, caught in a moment where time stretched beyond reason. The low breathing continued, a soft rasp that made my skin crawl. I knew I needed to move, but fear held me in place. Every logical thought vanished under the weight of anxiety, and all I could hear were the whispers urging me to run. Then, with a loud crack, the emergency lights flickered to life, casting a dim red glow over the room. Shadows danced on the walls and I could finally see. My eyes darted around, searching for whatever was lurking just out of sight. That's when I caught a glimpse of movement. There, just at the edge of the light, I saw a figure. A silhouette stood still, almost blending into the darkness. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. Who's there? I managed to stammer, my voice barely a whisper. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it slowly stepped into the light. My breath hitched at the sight. It was a man. He looked disheveled, his hair unkempt and his clothes rumpled. But there was something unsettling about his eyes, cold and hollow. He studied me with a curious intensity, like he was dissecting my very being. What did you see? He asked, his voice low and gravelly. I hesitated, unsure how to answer. Nothing. Just some data. I didn't mean to intrude. I stammered, the pit in my stomach growing deeper. He chuckled softly, but it didn't feel right. You think they don't see you? You're not the first to dig too deep, and you won't be the last. His expression shifted, turning grim. You need to leave. Now. A part of me wanted to turn and run, but another part was drawn in by his urgency. Why? What's happening here? I pressed, desperate for clarity. He looked around, as if checking for eavesdroppers. They're hiding something. Rooms marked in red. You shouldn't be asking questions about those. His eyes narrowed. Get out while you can. They'll come for you next. Who will? I was frustrated, craving answers that danced just out of reach. Just trust me. He stepped closer, the shadows swallowing him briefly before the red light illuminated his face once more. You'll regret this. I did. And just like that, he shifted back into the darkness, blending in until he vanished. My stomach churned as I processed his words. I felt more lost than ever. Then, a sudden clattering noise echoed through the room. I jerked my head toward the source. A metal door at the far end of the room had swung open, revealing an ominous corridor beyond. Now you've done it. The whispers hissed in unison, enveloping me in dread. My instincts screamed at me to run, to get far away from this place, but my feet wouldn't move. I was rooted to the spot. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever lay at the end of that corridor was directly tied to my discovery. It was a decision I had to make fast. I could either take the risk and unravel the secrets or heed the stranger's warning and escape while I could. In that moment of indecision, I heard footsteps approaching from the corridor. Panic surged through me. I had to choose, and I had to choose now. I took a deep breath and focused on the door. If there was a way out, I had to find it. As I moved toward the opening, I braced myself for whatever was waiting on the other side. For the moment I stepped through the threshold, a chill swept over me. The corridor stretched out like a dark tunnel, the low hum of machinery vibrating through the air. It felt like stepping into another world, one devoid of the rule of light. I took a deep breath and forced myself to move forward, despite every instinct telling me to turn back as I walked. The footsteps I had heard before receded, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to press in on me from all sides. The walls were cold metal, painted a dull gray that swallowed any light. I took slow, careful steps, straining my ears for any sound that would guide me or warn me. My heart raced with each footfall, echoing loudly in my mind. Then I noticed them rows of doors lining either side of the corridor, each marked with a small red label. They were the same as the rooms the disheveled man had warned me about. My stomach dropped. Should I explore these rooms? Or should I keep moving down the corridor? I paused at the first door. It had no handle, just a small keypad beside it. Curiosity clawed at me, battling the fear that anchored me in place. I moved closer, the glow from my phone providing a momentary comfort. I pressed my ear against the cold metal surface, trying to discern any sound from within. Nothing. When I saw it, I thought, as my gaze fell on the floor near my feet. A small, folded piece of paper caught my eye, partially hidden in the shadows. I picked it up and opened it carefully. Scrawled in hasty handwriting were 3 words: "Do not enter." My fingers trembled as I read and reread the warning. It felt ominous, a seismic jolt of caution pulling at the edges of my curiosity. I glanced back down the corridor, as if the shadows might bring the man back to explain. But he was gone, and I was alone with my choices as I deliberated. The lights flickered, casting unsettling shadows that danced across the walls. My breathing quickened. I needed to keep moving. Remembering the urgency in that man's voice, I chose to leave the first door behind. I continued down the corridor, each step taken in reluctance. But then I heard a low thud followed by hurried whispers. The sound echoed off the walls, growing clearer, and I instinctively ducked behind a nearby doorway. My heart raced as I pressed my back against the cold metal, listening intently. The whispers grew louder until they morphed into a heated argument. 2 voices, distorted and laced with tension. They were close, too close. I leaned forward, straining to catch their words. "I told you to stop," one voice snapped. "They're not ready for this." "Ready for what?" The other voice was more subdued but equally tense. "This is the chance we've been waiting for." I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me. I was in too deep. The fragmented pieces of the conversation made my head spin. Whatever was happening behind those doors, whatever secret they were protecting, was massive. Suddenly, the arguing stopped. Silence enveloped me like a thick fog. I peered around the corner just as a figure emerged from the shadows. Panic surged within me, and without thinking, I turned to flee. My heart pounded as I raced down the corridor, the breaths coming faster and faster. I didn't know where I was heading. I just knew I had to get away. But before I could reach the end, the lights flickered once more and then went out, plunging me into darkness. The silence was deafening. I stood frozen, consumed by fear. I was trapped. Chapter 5. I took a step back, heart hammering. The darkness clung to me like a heavy blanket, suffocating and disorienting. I could barely see the outline of the hallway, but I could feel the cold metal walls pressing in on me. The silence was unnerving, and all I had was the frantic rhythm of my heartbeat to keep me anchored. Then, I heard it, a faint scraping sound, like something dragging across the floor. My breath caught in my throat. I held my phone tightly, the weak light flickering as I turned it on, casting an eerie glow around me. The beam landed on a wall of metal, but my eyes were drawn toward the source of the sound, which was getting closer. I darted a glance behind me, half expecting to see the figure from before, but there was nothing. My instincts screamed at me to run, yet I hesitated. What if this was my only chance to uncover the truth? With my heart still racing, I moved toward the sound. It came from a door further down the corridor, one I hadn't noticed before. It was far less imposing than the others, with nothing but a small dent where a handle once was. I could feel a strange pull toward it, as if something inside was calling me. That I crept closer. The whispers from earlier echoed in my mind, and I shuddered. What if this was the door they had argued about? What if whatever was inside was meant for me? As I neared the door, the scraping noise shifted to a soft click. My breath hitched. Something was happening inside. I pressed my ear against the door, my curiosity battling with primal fear. It didn't sound dangerous. It sounded familiar. And then it hit me, voices. I could hear words slipping through the cracks. Time is running out. We have no choice but to proceed. Pause followed, thick with tension. If we don't do this now, everything will change. I stepped back, the adrenaline surging through me like fire. I didn't know what to do. It felt wrong to stand there, eavesdropping like this. But I had to know what they were up to. In that moment, there was a loud bang. The door I had been so intent on suddenly swung open, and the figure of a man appeared. His eyes locked onto mine. A mixture of surprise and fear plastered across his face. My first instinct was to bolt, but I was rooted in place. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, but it came out more like a whisper. "Get inside. Now," he ordered, his voice urgent. I barely had time to process what he said before he grabbed my arm and yanked me through the doorway. As I stumbled into the room, the oppressive silence of the hallway was replaced with a low hum. I looked around, and my stomach dropped. The walls were lined with screens, all displaying a mix of figures, charts, and strange symbols. A large table in the center held various papers strewn across it. In one corner, a door labeled Exit flickered ominously. "This wasn't supposed to happen," the man muttered, more to himself than me. "They know we've been compromised. You need to help us." Help? I had no idea what was happening. My head spun with questions, but before I could speak, the lights flickered back on, revealing the chaos around me. I was locked inside that strange room, and whatever choice I made next could change everything. In that moment, I knew I had to make a decision. Would I dig deeper into this madness, or try to escape while I still could? The weight of uncertainty was crushing, but I could feel time slipping away. Chapter 6. I looked around, trying to process the chaos in front of me. The man was pacing, his face pale as he muttered to himself. I felt his urgency but had no clue what I was getting involved in. The buzzing from the screens filled the room like a swarm of angry bees, each chart and figure hinting at secrets I couldn't fathom. "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask, my voice trembling. "Names don't matter right now," he said sharply, stopping to face me. "What matters is that you understand the importance of this moment." "What moment?" I pressed, feeling irritation mixed with fear. I needed information desperately. He ran a hand through his hair, glancing back toward the door. "They've noticed we're missing time. Isn't that interesting?" There was an edge to his tone, as if he were trying to convince himself more than me. "If we don't get the data we need before they come here, it's game over." Panic washed over me. Game over? What game? I wanted to scream that I didn't sign up for any of this. My mind raced back to the whispers I had heard earlier. Everything felt connected, but I couldn't see how. Data? What data? He motioned to the table cluttered with papers. "The charts, they show the fluctuations of time and events," he said, his voice dropping. "We're trying to manipulate them to stabilize the timeline." Weird, right? But if we fail before he could finish, a loud crash echoed from outside the door, cutting him off. I jumped, fear bubbling in my chest. What was that? He took a step toward me, eyes wide. They've found us. We need to move now. He rushed around the table, snatching a handful of papers and shoving them into a bag that looked just like the ones I'd seen in old spy movies. I stood frozen, scanning the room for a means of escape. The flickering exit sign taunted me, but I had no clue what awaited me outside. "Are you coming or not?" he barked, returning to my side. "This place isn't safe anymore." "What about the door?" I asked, my voice shaking. "We can't go out without knowing." He cut me off again. "We don't have time for this. If they know we're here, everything could unravel." "You don't understand." His frustration was palpable, and I felt a flicker of understanding. He was scared too. "We could take the papers," I suggested hesitantly, thinking I might be able to piece this puzzle together later. "No time," he insisted, grabbing my wrist and pulling me toward the exit door. Fear and adrenaline coursed through me as I felt the handle cool against my palm. That when I saw it, a shadow moving on the other side of the door. My breath caught in my throat as I realized we might not be alone anymore. "Wait," I shouted. But he didn't listen. He swung open the door, and we were met with blinding light. I stepped into the unknown, heart racing and no idea what was waiting for us. Chapter 7. The light hit me like a wave, bright and disorienting. I shielded my eyes, straining to understand where we had landed. The man released my wrist and stepped ahead, his figure silhouetted against the glare. I hesitated, the shadows of that strange room still fresh in my mind. "Come on," he urged, glancing back at me. "Stay close." I took a step forward, trying to keep up as we hurried through a long corridor. The floor was cold beneath my feet, and I noticed the sterile smell of something unfamiliar hanging in the air. It felt like I had walked into a hospital or a lab, the kind of place I always imagined existed in conspiracy theories. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from behind us. My heart jumped, and I pressed forward, instinctively matching his pace. "What now?" I whispered, panic rising again. "Just keep going," he hissed, picking up the pace. The urgency in his voice pushed me, even as fear clawed at my stomach. I could barely think straight, but I knew we had to escape whatever this was. As we turned a corner, the corridor split into two. One path was dark and narrow, while the other was lined with flickering fluorescent lights. Without hesitating, he chose the narrow passage, and I followed. The shadows seemed to close in around us, and I felt an uneasy chill creep over my skin. "Do you know where we're headed?" I asked, trying to mask my fear. "What's south this place?" "We're in a government facility," he replied sharply, urgency lacing his tone. "I thought we'd managed to stay hidden, but they're onto us, must have been tracking our every move. We need to reach the control room before they lock it down." "What control room?" The more he said, the more questions swelled in my mind. "The one that controls the timeline," he said simply, his eyes darting back and forth as paranoia danced on his features. "But first, we need a way to access it." "The keycards." He stopped suddenly, his expression shifting from frantic to pensive. "I can't do this without the cards. We need to find the evidence they have stored." Before I could ask what kind of evidence, the distant sound of booted feet grew louder. My heart raced. We had to move. "Come on," he urged again, taking my hand and pulling me down the dark corridor. But a sudden crash echoed from behind us, and he whipped around just in time to see a figure emerge from the shadows. A shadow that seemed to loom larger than life. "Run," he shouted as the figure lunged toward us. With adrenaline coursing through me, I turned and bolted. We raced down the corridor, the sounds of our pursuer growing closer, each step echoing like a countdown in my head. I caught a glimpse of a door ahead, slightly ajar. Desperation surged, and I sprinted toward it, praying we could find a way out. For a moment, I thought we'd made it, but that moment dissolved as I heard the click of a gun. The grip of fear tightened around my throat as I turned to see the figure behind us, weapon drawn. "Stop right there," he barked, and in that moment, I realized the truth. We were cornered, with nowhere to go. Chapter 8. The gunman stood there, eyes narrowed, waiting for us to make a move. I felt trapped, the walls of the corridor seemingly closing in on me. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I knew that was impossible. My chest tightened, and I forced myself to breathe slowly, trying to keep my panic at bay. "Please," I said, my voice shaking. "We mean no harm." "Shut up," he snapped, his trigger finger twitching. "Hands where I can see them." My companion turned to me, urgency flashing in his gaze. "He's not going to let us go. We need to distract him." "How?" I whispered back, my mind racing. "I don't know," he muttered, his eyes darting around. Then a flicker of determination crossed his face. "Just trust me." Before I could respond, he turned suddenly and yelled, "Look out!" He lunged to the side, pointing past the gunman in a feigned panic. The guard hesitated, glancing over his shoulder to end that split second. My companion lunged forward, tackling the gunman. They crashed to the floor, and a struggle broke out. Fists pounding against flesh, I stood frozen, caught between fear and the need to act. The fight raged barely a few feet away from me. I wasn't too sure what to do. Should I help, or should I run? Then I noticed something shiny on the ground, a keycard holder. It gleamed like a lifeline. My heart raced as I crouched down, reaching for it. As I grabbed it, I felt a spark of hope. This could be our way out. The scuffle continued, but I pressed my back against the wall and pulled out the cards. There were 3 of them, each one labeled with a different color. I had no idea what they controlled, but I knew we needed to get to that control room. Before I could make a decision, a loud crash echoed through the corridor, the sound of something heavy being thrown. I turned back just in time to see the gunman throw my companion off him, sending him crashing against the wall. The guard stood tall, breathing hard, pointing the gun at him. "No!" I shouted instinctively, and without thinking, I rushed towards them. The gunman glanced at me, startled. I held up the keycards. "Wait, you need these. Just let him go." A moment of uncertainty crossed his face, and I seized the opportunity. "You don't want to do this. We can help each other." He sneered, his finger itching on the trigger. "Help? With what? A couple of clueless civilians? Civilians who just stumbled into this place. Together, we could fight back against." My voice trailed off as I realized the risk of saying too much. Suddenly, the alarm blared, loud and shrill, filling the air with urgency. The gunman glanced down the corridor, and I could see the panic on his face. "Damn it! More of them are coming," he barked. He shifted his attention back to my companion, who was still recovering from the earlier blow. "Get out of here," my companion shouted, pushing himself to his feet. "No, we stick together," I insisted, and then I saw the faint outline of a door marked with an emergency exit sign at the end of the hall, its light flickering against the chaos. "Follow me," I yelled. I sprinted toward the exit, clutching the keycards tightly in my hand. The sound of pounding footsteps mixed with the growing alarm shifted my focus from the fight behind me. I could feel an urgency building inside me. As I reached the door, time seemed to freeze. I raised the keycards, praying they would work. But against the background of blaring alarms, I realized something more critical: we were running out of time. Chapter 9. I reached the door, breathing hard, and pressed the first keycard against the reader. A red light blinked angrily, and my heart sank. I swiped the second card, and still nothing. I glanced back, caught a glimpse of my companion wrestling to stand. The gunman was shifting his attention toward us, eyes wild with uncertainty and rage. "Come on, work," I cried, panic rising as I swiped the last card. The indicator flickered green, and I heard the magnet lock click. Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived. The door swung open, revealing a dimly lit room that smelled of dust and metal. Another set of alarms blared from inside, and as I stepped through, a rush of fear hit me like a wave. I yanked the door shut behind me, locking it just in time. "Where are we?" my companion gasped, staggering into the room. He peered around, his face a mask of confusion and anxiety. I took in my surroundings. Metal filing cabinets lined one wall, and a flickering fluorescent bulb cast a sickly light over everything. A massive console with buttons and screens dominated the center. Red warning lights flashed menacingly. Before I could answer, the sound of pounding footsteps approached the door. They're coming. I hissed, backing up toward the console. Can we lock this? He asked, breathing heavily. I nodded and slid the bolt shut just as hands slammed against the door. Get down. We need to hide, I urged. We ducked behind the thick console, pressing ourselves against the cold metal. The door rattled, and the gunman yelled something on the other side. A loud bang shook the room. We can't stay here long, I whispered, struggling to keep my voice steady. My gaze drifted to the monitors. Several screens displayed views from different security cameras, and one in particular caught my eye. It showed a corridor not far from where we were. I squinted and realized a group of guards was already storming toward our location. Look, I pointed. We need to figure out how to get out of here. My companion scrambled up to peek at the console, his fingers hovering over the buttons. What do these do? He asked, anxiety tightening his voice. I don't know. Just press something. I yelled, urgency clawing at me. He pressed a series of buttons, and suddenly one of the screens changed to show a map of the facility. This might help. Then everything went dark. The screens flickered off, and we were swallowed by an oppressive silence. Great. Now we're blind, my companion muttered, fear creeping into his tone. The banging on the door intensified, and I felt my heart race. I grabbed his arm. We have to move now. A sudden thought shot through my mind. Wait, there's gotta be a way to disable the security systems. Maybe that LL buy us some time. He nodded, determination sparking in his eyes. Together, we searched the console, desperate to find a solution. I realized I had to make a choice, even if it meant I had to take a leap of faith I wasn't sure I was ready for. That's when I noticed a small button, hidden beneath a panel labeled, Emergency Protocol. My instincts screamed at me about the risks, but the pounding on the door reminded me we had little time left. Should I press it? The sound of the door splintering made the decision for me. I slammed my finger down on the button, almost expecting the world to unravel right beneath me. The room shuddered for an instant, and then it all went quiet, eerily quiet. The alarms cut off, the banging ceased, and for a brief moment, silence enveloped us. I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope, but it quickly faded as I realized this might be a dangerous silence. What did you do? My companion whispered, his eyes wide. I wasn't sure how to answer. I think I shut down the security system I managed, at least for now. The monitors flickered back to life, displaying a few scattered views. I faced one of the screens, seeing the guards disoriented, searching down the wrong corridor. There was a chance. This way. I grabbed my companion by the wrist and pulled him towards the back of the room where another door stood ajar. We pushed through, avoiding the faint glow of emergency lights flickering above us, and rushed into a narrow stairwell. My heart raced, each footstep echoing in the silence that had returned, now heavy with the weight of uncertainty. Where do we go now? He asked, breathing heavily, panic creeping back into his voice. Anywhere but here, I replied, hoping it was true. I spotted the exit sign glowing faintly at the bottom of the stairs and felt a surge of adrenaline. Every cell in my body screamed to keep moving. We descended swiftly, the metal steps clanging beneath our weight. As we reached the ground level, I shoved the final door open. A burst of cold air greeted us, and I found myself outside, gasping for breath. The sprawling facility lay before us, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. I think we made it, I exclaimed, but my joy was cut short. The moment we hit the ground, I turned to see figures emerging from the building. We weren't free yet. Run! I yelled, and we dashed toward the nearest cover, ducking behind a massive shipping container. From our hideout, I could see guards scrambling, their radios crackling with urgency. We can't stay here, my companion urged, glancing anxiously back toward the entrance. What's the plan? I don't know, I spat, trying to catch my breath while my heart still pounded furiously. There was no safe exit in sight, only endless questions swirling in my mind. Was this all part of some cruel game? What had we stumbled into? Suddenly, a realization struck me like lightning. Wait, those rooms marked in red. They must have something to do with this. What do you mean? He asked, confusion lacing his voice. Maybe something related to whatever they were trying to hide. If we could access those records, it might explain everything. The thought filled me with both dread and determination. Lasting truths lingered beyond our fleeting escape. But time was against us. The guards had regrouped, and their menacing shouts grew closer. "We can't go back in there," my companion murmured, and he was right. The urgency outside jolted us again. "Then what now?" I questioned, scanning the area. I caught a glimpse of another fence section not far from where we stood. "Over there," I pointed. "If we can just get past it, we might stand a chance." We raced toward the gap, slipping through the space beneath the wire, my mind racing with the multitude of questions and fears that filled the air. We crouched low in the brush beyond the fence, our hearts pounding as we swallowed the fear that lingered in our throats as we caught our breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only escaped the beginning of something deeper. Was this truly over? Or merely a pause in a larger, unfolding mystery? I turned to him, desperate for reassurance. "What if they come after us?" He sighed heavily, glancing back at the facility. "They might, but maybe we learned enough to fight them if we have to." The unease settled in my stomach like lead. That facility was a dark puzzle, its pieces scattered in a forgotten corridor. Would someone else fill them in? Or was this the start of something that could never truly end? As we moved further into the night, I couldn't shake the memories, the whispers and shadows that haunted me. I tried to picture my life returning to normal, yet it felt impossible now. I pondered over what waited ahead, knowing a part of me might never find peace again. I relocated my gaze to the quiet horizon, holding onto the lingering shred of hope, tempered by uncertainty. Wherever the path led, I knew one thing for sure. The pursuit of truth often lies shrouded in darkness, and some doors are better left unopened.